Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 37. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And today we are excited because it is the next Tavern Book Club book.
Yay!
This week we're talking about Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey, which is one of her many books about the Heralds of Valdemar. So this is a really, really big, huge series all made up of a bunch of trilogies and such.
Yeah. It's really not as daunting when you look at it from the side, the perspective that it's broken up into bite-sized chunks.
It's still pretty daunting to me.
Well, yeah, but, it's another one of those where if you read this trilogy, you don't have to reread this trilogy to read another trilogy.
Okay.
You will remember enough about it to, when you start reading another one, you'll be like, oh, I remember that being mentioned, but it's not like a continuity type thing.
Right.
For the most part.
So they're all set around the same universe, the same land, but they're kind of separate, standalone.
Yeah,
okay.
there's some of them, some copies of her books will have a timeline printed at the beginning of it, and you can see the chronological order of all the books. But the only ones you really have to read in order are the ones that are like the most recent in the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do sort of tell a continuous story, and it's just 3 trilogies that you have to read in order.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Especially the Mage Winds and the Mage Storms, because they kind of continue the same storyline from a different character's perspective.
Oh, okay.
Like, the Mage Winds are from the perspective of a Sun Priest from Kars, and the Mage Storms are from the perspective of Elspeth.
Okay.
And that is the same Elspeth that we are introduced to in Arrows of the Queen.
Okay.
When she's all grown up.
So she's not the brat anymore.
No. She's well on her way to being cured of that by the end of Arrows of the Queen.
Yeah. I liked her, though.
Yeah.
She made me laugh. But before we get started, one quick announcement. It's so nice, actually, having some sort of idea what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was just looking at that before we started recording because I think we mentioned before that we got approved for 2 more ARCs from NetGalley. So I was trying to fit those in. Of course, after I had, gone through and made a list, then we have to fit 2 more books in there. Of course, that's going to happen. But we're very happy to have them. Don't get me wrong. But it's just, I had just gotten this list all nice and pretty, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, wrench it all out of order and put it back together again, but that's okay.
I'm just glad we have a schedule now.
We do have a schedule, and
it's time to know what we're going to be talking about and have time to compose my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, but I wanted to mention that next week is going to be a really fun episode, I think, because we are talking about our favorite quotes from...
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Either our favorite books or just, quotes from... that, kind of speak certain things to us, whatever. And we would like to get as much participation in that one as possible. So if you have any quotes that you want to have read on the show, let us know, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the episode. But we definitely want to get as many people talking about it as possible, because that's something that's fairly easy. You don't have to get into a big, huge discussion. You just say, I like this, and give us a sentence or 2, and we'll read it on the show. Yep. So, all right. As far as books that we're currently reading, I literally finished Arrows of the Queen 10 minutes ago.
I finished it about 2 hours ago.
Yeah. I've had I don't think that I'm going into like a reading slump, because although the way I've been going this year, it's bound to happen soon, but I haven't been reading as much the past week or so. I'm still, I put off reading Fire by Kristen Kishore because I was trying to make sure I finished this book, and I barely did that. But it's just been kind of crazy around my house this past week, 2 weeks or so. So I haven't been reading a whole lot like I should.
It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't have an excuse. Okay, my most current excuse is I've been playing Lego Harry Potter years 5 through 7.
Valid excuse.
I played 2 days in a row. I played until after 6 in the morning. And I played all the way through the story. So now I'm going back and doing free play and trying to collect everything and actually get 100% completion on it.
Right.
And once I do that, it's Lego Lord of the Rings.
See, I haven't seen much of the Lego Lord of the Rings. I've seen the Lego Harry Potter ones because the kids have it and they play it all the time.
I've played it a little bit. Me and Holly played a little bit when she bought it, and then, I came over here and borrowed it from her. So I played a little bit when I got home. It's funny, I'm used to playing Lord of the Rings online.
Right.
And, when you travel from Bree to Weathertop, if your character runs, it's going to take you 6, 7, 8 minutes to get there.
Right.
It's a pretty good piece. I mean, it's not quite on the scale of what it would be in real life if you look at, Tolkien's maps.
Right.
But in Lego Lord of the Rings, you walk out of Bree and take a right, and you're at Weathertop. So, I mean, the distances are vastly condensed, and that's a little jarring for me being used to playing Lord of the Rings online.
Right.
But it's so cute. It's so funny.
Oh, all of the Lego games are. I know that my stepson loves them. Well, he loves Legos of all kinds, but he's had the Lego Batman and Lego Star Wars, and as soon as he saw that they were coming up with the Lego Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, he had to have them. So, yeah, they're a staple in our house.
I would love to have the Lego Batman.
Oh gosh, it's funny. It's so funny.
The Harry Potter ones are so hilarious. I love the cutscenes because, the Lego people don't talk.
No.
So they grunt and gesture. And I'm sorry, my favorite part was in the first one when they go into Gringotts and Hagrid is trying to tell the goblin that he needs in Harry's vault. The goblin ain't getting it, so he picks Harry up and waves him around.
Like, this guy.
The first time I saw that, me and Holly were playing and we both lost it. It was so funny.
Oh, gosh.
But that's what I've been doing. But I did manage to finish the book, which, I read about half of it the first day I started reading, and then I read a little bit on it yesterday, and then I read the rest of it today. So, I mean, it's actually a fairly short, easy to get through book.
It is, and it doesn't.
It's not tiny.
No. It's not like some of the past book of the months that we've had where it's been, you think it's not going to be that bad, and then it turns out to be like 600 pages of teeny tiny print.
Yeah.
And no, this was a lot easier to get through. Normal size print and only like 300 pages. It's a nice average size book. And to be honest, it's a very easy read. It's not super complicated.
Yeah.
It's not one of these that's a really dense, intricate plot, which actually in some ways is almost a little bit of a complaint for me, because there was some of it that was just, it was so simple and so obvious that you almost knew the ending before it happened.
Well, this was her first book in that series. I don't know if this is the first book she'd actually written, but I know it was the first of her Heralds of Valdemar books.
Uh-huh.
And the intrigue and the twists and the turns, you get a little more of them in the next two books. And definitely later on in the series, there's a lot of stuff going on that she gets better at it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've read some other Mercedes Lackey books before and enjoyed them. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy this one either, but it was just, there were some bits of it. I was glad that I was reading this book right now because I've been so distracted and had such a hard time really getting into books that I didn't have to think really hard.
Yeah.
On this one, because it's a fairly simple, straightforward storyline. So let's get into that storyline a little bit.
Well, this book is the story of a girl named Talia. She's Holderkin, which she lives on the border of Valdemar, like almost outside the kingdom. And they're a very very uptight, set in their ways kind of people.
Right.
And Talia is kind of a dreamer, and she's a girl and she knows how to read, and that's a no-no in the hold. And she's always getting in trouble. And she dreams of becoming a Herald of Valdemar because she's read the stories and she thinks, that would be that's what I want to do. At the beginning of the story, she's being gathered before her father's first wife and all of his other wives because she's 13 and it's time for her to get married.
Yeah, and see, okay, right off the top, this is another thing that was like, okay, this is pretty obvious, but you have this young girl who is different from everybody else in her immediate circle of family and acquaintances, and she dreams of becoming a herald, and she sneaks books to read about the heralds. So you just kind of know at this point she's going to end up with the heralds, becoming a herald or something. But I was really upset when they brought her in and said, "Okay, you need to get married now. You're 13. Your courses have been regular." It's like, "Oh, that's lovely. She's of childbearing age now, so let's marry her off because she's a handful and she's in trouble all the time." And it was just so you already know she's different from all of her people, and you know what potential she has because she actually thinks. And does that get her in trouble? Of course it does. But you can just tell that she has a really extraordinary mind. And they want to do everything they possibly can to tamp that out of her.
Yeah, they want her to be meek and obey and all of sorts of things that I would never be able to do.
Oh no. I couldn't live like that. And she's talking about other family, and I don't know if they were cousins or siblings or exactly who they were, but like one of them, there were only two people really that were friendly to her and her family, and one of them died and the other had been married off to a really abusive person. And
pretty sure it was her brother and sister.
Okay. It was hard to tell because there was just so many of them since the father had so many different wives. It was hard to see like exactly what all of the relationships were, but I know that Talia's mother dies before the book begins.
Yeah, she died in childbirth.
Okay, I couldn't remember, but no, it was her sister that was married off to this man, and she said that she just saw a complete change in her sister because she used to be so happy and lighthearted, and now she just looked so drawn and pale and afraid. And so, of course, Talia is terrified that this sort of thing is going to be done to her as well. That she's going to be married off to some man who's basically going to be instructed to get this whimsy out of her.
Right. I would be scared of that too.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. But I would probably have reacted the same way that Talia did by trying to get as far away from there as possible.
Yeah. And, she finds her hiding spot and she hears them come look for her and she stays hidden and finally she hears the sound of a horse with bells on. It's jingling. Mm-hmm. So she crawls out of her hole to look because she remembers in all the stories, Harold's horses, the companions, always wear bells. And turns out it's a companion and he's looking for her. So, it was definitely kind of obvious from the beginning that Talia was going to be chosen. And usually in a lot of the stories, she gets a little better later on. They're not as obvious. It's still kind of obvious because that's kind of the point. The stories are usually about someone who is chosen. Mm-hmm. But she kind of you get a longer, more detailed introduction to the character before they're chosen later on in some of the later books. So, and then, well, the Mage Storms books are not about, they're not told from a herald's perspective, and they're not told from the perspective of someone who's chosen. So, they're a little different.
Okay.
But, anyway, this companion shows up, and you find out his name is Roland. And basically, he shows up, chooses her, makes her forget that she was chosen, and carts her off to Haven.
Right. And now the thing that's really interesting, these companions, they look like horses.
They're not horses.
But they're not.
No.
They look like horses. I mean, if you saw one, you would assume that it was a horse, even if it was a very spectacular horse. But
well, they're all white.
Yes.
Pristine white. They have silver hooves and sapphire blue eyes.
Right. So they're very pretty.
I don't think yeah, she doesn't make as huge a deal about what the companions look like in this book, but more of it comes along later, and I know what the companions actually are, but I'm not going to spoil that for y'all.
Okay, yeah, because I have no idea.
I've read enough of the book. It's one of the surprises that if you start reading these books and get into the series, that's one of the things that'll keep you reading, is wanting to find out what the companions are, and wanting to know what's so special about them and why they're so intelligent and where they came from and all of that. And you'll also get to the point, they mention the founding of Valdemar in this book, how King Valdemar took his people and ran away to the middle of the desert and founded a country, and the first 3 horses were born out of the grove and blah, blah, blah. That's the story everybody wants. I've never met a Mercedes Lackey fan, someone who's actually read all of the books, who is not dying for the story of King Valdemar. That's what we all want, and she won't give it to us. But, anyway, he carts her off, and he's stopping at these Herald way stations and stopping in these towns, and she's confused. Since he made her forget she was chosen, she thinks she's returning him to Haven.
Right.
She thinks that, oh, I found this companion, I should return it.
I know, that was just so cute. And she's so confused because she's thinking the same way that the people in her hold would think. And they didn't really like the Heralds all that much. They thought that they were just really troublemakers and kind of lewd and lascivious. Yeah. And
which they are, lewd and lascivious. But,
well,
and they make no secret of it.
That's okay. But it was so cute because she keeps thinking that she's in the mindset that everybody's going to be the same way that her people were. And so every time they came to a town, she was always surprised that they were helping her and giving her supplies, and she keeps thinking that people are going to think maybe she stole the horse, or that she's going to get in trouble in some way, and they're going to either send her back to the hold, or they're going to do something to her, like put her in jail or something like that. But everybody keeps being so nice and helping her, and she's just completely flabbergasted. Yeah. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but okay.
And finally, she gets to a guard who tells her, she's like, look, I can't explain it to you. We're not allowed to. It'll be explained to you when you get to Haven. But she tries to, ease her fears and tells her, she's doing the right thing. She's not doing anything wrong, and she's not going to get in trouble for it.
Right.
Which helps ease her mind a little bit.
Well, yeah.
But she's still very nervous because, where she lives, she couldn't trust anybody. And she has a really hard time trusting any of the people she meets along the way.
Yeah, that's a pretty major theme throughout this book, is how much her upbringing has really affected the way that she's growing up, and how she's a lot of it having all those trust issues, and it's really sad. I really don't like her family.
I don't either.
I really hate her family, actually.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of...
Are we going to see them again? Or are they gone for good?
I'm pretty sure that she sees them again.
Ugh.
Because I know, in this book she makes up that story about, Skiff was in there to remove her name from the Holderkin thing. And her family disavowed her. They said, Sinhold has no daughter Talia. But I'm pretty sure she has a run-in with them again. They never really accept her, and she doesn't really want them to, but I'm pretty sure they do show up again.
Okay. Oh well. But anyway, so once she gets to the Haven and she meets with this lady who turns out to be, the queen.
Yep.
Who's very nonchalant about, meeting this young girl who's basically a runaway.
Well, she's the queen of Valdemar. She's a herald herself. That's the thing about Valdemar. That's what caused a lot of the problem. You find out that her and her husband had problems, and he ended up getting killed. And you find out because the ruler of Valdemar has to be a herald.
Right.
They won't allow anyone who's not a herald to rule the kingdom. So she knows what it's like to be chosen. So she has a little bit more patience for something like that than most rulers would.
Right. But I loved Talia's reaction to it.
Yeah.
She has no idea what's going on. It's so cute.
Yeah, it really is. And her mind is just blown when she finds out that, she has been chosen, her dreams are coming true, she's going to be a herald, and they start kind of laying the groundwork for finding out what her mind gift actually is when she keeps saying that these people she meets feel good like her brother did or her sister did, and that, she feels like she can trust them, but she doesn't want to because she's afraid to.
Right.
And that kind of leads up to discovering that her gift is empathy.
Right, but we don't find that out for a little while.
Yeah, that's actually pretty close to the end of the book when they finally figure that out.
Yeah. But, they get her settled in, they get her as basically like a schedule because she's there to learn. And
yeah, it's set up kind of like a university.
Right.
Type thing.
And she's all...
Look, I want to move to Haven and go to the Collegium. I'm just saying.
Well, I thought Talia was just gonna, die of happiness when she found the library there.
Oh yes, I would too.
Well, yeah, and she had to spend her entire life sneaking around to read, or doing it when it was, easy to hide, or when she was busy doing something else, so it wouldn't look like she was really paying attention to what she was reading. And now she's got access to all of these books, and she's encouraged to read as opposed to having to hide it before. And just the contrast between where she had come from and where she is now is just, she doesn't know how to deal with it.
Well, it would be a shock for anybody.
Yeah, it really is.
To be raised a certain way and then find this place that's completely different, that's completely opposite of the way you were raised.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a shock for anybody. It would be for me. I mean, the opposite of the way I was raised, if I had to live where Talia came from and I couldn't read and had to get married and blah, blah, I would be like, hey, ain't happening.
Yeah. But I can't see you taking that well.
No, I wouldn't. You can take away many things from me. You're not taking my books.
She'll fight you for it.
You better believe it. But, she gets settled in, and she makes a few friends, and then the unaffiliated students.
Oh, gosh, I hate them.
Oh, yeah. And basically, what it boils down to is Talia is the Queen's own herald, which is a special herald, and the point of the Queen's own is this is a herald that will always tell the monarch the truth, regardless of what's going on, and try to help them be a better ruler. And the former Queen's own, Talamir, they suspect at the beginning of this that he was murdered. By the end of it, you find out he was actually murdered. And,
right.
It's kind of her job to be the monarch's closest confidant And Talia is of an age where she can be friends with Selene, but at the same time, she is the right age that she can tame the brat and actually be her friend.
Right. So Selene is the queen,
Right.
but the queen's daughter and the heir to the throne, her name is Elspeth.
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 Well, the heir presumptive, because she hasn't been chosen. She's, a brat. She's a horrible little evil child, and she's terrified of companions.
Right.
So, if she can't be turned around and become chosen, then she can't be the queen.
Right.
She'll have to be.
And she is a holy terror.
She really is. And that ends up, you find out that that's the fault of her maid, Hulda.
Yeah.
We haven't seen the last of her either, I'll go ahead and tell you.
Okay.
But, Hulda, you find out that there was this big to-do when Selene and Prince, what's-his-face with a 6-mile-long name that...
Her husband.
Yeah. He wanted to be king, and Selene wouldn't give him the title. She couldn't because he wasn't chosen. And a bunch of stuff happened, and they haven't really ferreted out all of the conspirators yet. And some of the nobles in the kingdom have set their children, the unaffiliated students, to get rid of Talia.
Well, and we need to explain too, because this took me a little bit to figure out, but the collegium, you have the Heralds Collegium, you have the Bardic Collegium, which is basically like the big music school.
Yeah.
Music, and I guess history too, because that's part of what the bards do.
Yeah.
And then you have the Healers Collegium. So you have these 3 schools, basically, that are all in this one place. And you have people who are in these various schools where the heralds are chosen. Now, are the bards and the healers chosen in a way as well? Or are they?
No, they're their gifts manifest, and there are people like the heralds can detect those gifts, and when the heralds find somebody that they think has bardic talent or healing talent, they send them to the collegium.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or people can, come and audition, I believe, for bardic. And they're distinguished by different colored uniforms. Full herald uniforms are white, so herald trainees wear gray. A full bard wears scarlet, trainees wear kind of a rust color, and healers wear bright green, and the trainees wear a lighter green. They'll also allow nobles to send their children there for a tuition, and they're called the unaffiliated students, and they wear blue.
And because they are children of nobles and raised to think that they are of a higher standard or a higher class than their surrounding people, they are big bullies.
Healers can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are lowborn.
And the reason that they all have the same uniform is because they all start at the same level. Whoever you were before you entered the collegium, that's gone, basically. It doesn't matter if you were highborn, if you were lowborn, if your, father was a count or a baron or whatever, or if your father was a farmer. They don't care. Once you enter the collegium, you are equal with everybody else, for the most part. I mean, there is a hierarchy within there, but for the most part, everybody starts off as equal. They're all the same. But the unaffiliated don't see it that way because they're not. I mean, they're a part of the collegium, sort of, but not really. And they're just a whole bunch of bullies, is what they are.
Yeah,
they're bad really people.
Well, not all of them. I mean, there's groups of them that are, but there's later on in the series you meet a few of the unaffiliated students who are actually really awesome.
Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Because for right now, the only ones that we know are really terrible.
Yeah, they are. But there's some later on that make up for those.
Okay, good. But yeah, basically this group of the unaffiliated students, or the blues as everybody calls them, set out to make Talia's life a living hell because they think that uh, she's lowborn, and they think that she's just getting above herself.
Yeah, and they think that, and two, their parents are putting pressure on them about it because this particular group anyway, their parents were supporters of, what went on with Selenae's husband and all of that. So a lot of it is pressure from their parents.
Yeah.
But they're sending her these notes that the ink disappears when she reads them, leaving her with a blank scrap of paper, and pushing and shoving and basically just tormenting her. Like children do. I mean, real kids, gangs of bullies do stuff like that every day.
Oh yeah.
And Talia has this weird desire that she has to prove herself to everybody, so she doesn't tell anybody what's going on.
Well, and this is also part of her upbringing, is because she doesn't think that anybody's going to believe her.
Right. She thinks they're all going to think she's crazy. Because, she's like, I know they say, we're all Herald trainees and we can trust each other, but, I just wasn't raised that way and I don't know if I can trust them yet. And they'll think I'm crazy. And if they think I'm crazy, they may send me back to the hold and I don't want to go there. So I'm just not going to tell anybody.
Yeah, she thinks that eventually they will give up and leave her alone. But
they don't. And finally it comes to a head where they throw her in the river.
In the frozen river.
Yeah.
I mean, throwing somebody in the river may or may not be a dangerous thing, but this is a frozen river, and she very nearly dies.
Yeah, and you find out then that their parents were pressuring them and had something to do with Talamir getting killed because they said, "Tell Talamir we send our regards" or something like that.
Right.
But her bond with her companion is so strong that he gets people there to rescue her in time. Thank God for Cheryl and Karen, who were raised in Lake of Endom. Sound familiar?
Yes, it does, actually.
That was on purpose. She said, I think it's in the Valdemar Companion, an interview she did, that was her way of paying homage to Tolkien, was to have Lake of Endom. And it's a perfectly round lake, just so you know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, they rescue her, and she's pretty sick for a while,
She's very sick for a while. She's got pneumonia, and she's, just beaten down in spirit, and forget about her health. I mean, she's devastated by this.
Well, this is after she had met Jadis, too. We forgot him.
Oh, I love him.
She meets this old herald who's retired and missing a leg, and she really bonds with him. He teaches her music.
And he plays the harp.
Tells her that she has a touch of bardic talent. That's why she's such a good singer. Which, once you get really engrossed in this universe and you can start sort of putting things together and know how things work, it's not so much bardic talent as it is her empathy.
Right.
That's bardic talent and empathy are very close to being the same thing.
That makes sense.
Because, a bard can use their talent to control a crowd and keep their emotions under control, or to stir up their emotions, or, things like that. And that's very closely tied in with empathy. And there's a lot of interesting things that crop up in this book that are kind of teasers and will be important. Like, somebody mentions, they're talking about, I think it's Chris and Dirk. One of them's a farseer and one of them's a fetcher, and they work really well together.
Mm-hmm.
They have the strongest gift of those natures that they've seen in a really long time. And somebody says, usually these gifts turn up right before they're needed.
Right.
You'll get a really strong, like, Talia being a really, really strong empath, and Chris and Dirk being really strong at foresight and fetching. You get these talents when something's about to happen, and Valdemar's going to need people with those talents.
Right. Well, part of it kicks in as their bond grows with their companion, too, right?
Well, Talia's kind of got woke up early when she hit her head when they threw her in the river.
Right.
And, you know, it doesn't really start causing problems in this book. She seems to have it under control, but I think it's in the second book that she basically just loses it and has to learn how to ground and center and build her shield better and control her gift better. She goes through a lot. She has a really hard time of it. Mercedes Lackey's like that. She tells you, the life of a herald is dangerous and some of them die, and she's not afraid to prove it.
Right. There several of them. We lose several of them throughout this story, so I can't imagine how bad it gets.
Yeah. Well, in this story, most of the heralds lost are just sort of peripheral characters.
Right.
They're not anyone we know, except for Ilsa at the end.
Yes. Oh, that made me so sad.
We knew her. We had experience with her. We had met her and talked to her. And, Mercedes Lackey's not above killing her point of view character. She's done it. I can think of twice off the top of my head that she did it. And another thing that was mentioned that was, they were talking about Griffin being a fire starter.
Uh-huh.
And Talia said she read the story of Laven Firestorm and what happened at Burning Pines. Mercedes Lackey actually wrote that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Brightly Burning. It's the story of Harold Laven Firestorm. So a lot of stuff that crops up in these books, you actually get those stories. And that's why this universe, I love it so much, is because, she mentions offhand Harold Laven Firestorm. Well, now we have a book that tells that story. And it starts off talking about Vonyl and the things that he did, and we've got that story. We've got that trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and you find out in the Mage Storms and the Mage Winds about the Mage Wars, about where Lake of Endom came from and the Dorisha Plains, which you haven't heard of those yet. And
no.
You find out about the Mage Wars, and you find out about why nobody in Valdemar has actual magic. They're just mind talent. You find out what the truth spell actually is.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff. See, that's why they're so good. That's why, you get sucked in, is because you want to know these things, and if you keep reading, eventually you find out.
Yeah, I can definitely see how this is set up for a whole bunch of other stuff, because and there's a couple of other things I want to talk about too, but you could just see there's little things that are just kind of it just seems like this little off the cuff comment, but that there's more to it than just that. So,
and the thing about it though is, at the time that this book was written, the other stuff wasn't there. This was her first Heralds of Valdemar book.
But she just took that stuff and expounded on it.
Yeah, she took everything she said, and I've read several interviews with her, and she talks about how she always tries to never write herself into a corner, never put herself in a position that she can't explain something easily.
Uh-huh.
And try not to create more questions than she can answer.
Well, that is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, and we love David Eddings, and we've complained about how inconsistent he is and stuff. You don't really have that problem with Mercedes Lackey. She knows her own material very well, and I've never run across an inconsistency like we do in Eddings.
And there's a lot of books in there for her to have made some mistakes on, but
nothing has ever jumped out at me, I will say. I won't say that they're not there. I'm just going to say they've never jumped out at me. And she does a fantastic job of keeping everything straight and knowing where she's going. And I think a lot of it, too, is, she wrote this book, and I'm pretty sure, her fans saw this story about Vonyl, and they're like, well, we want that story.
Yeah.
So, okay, here, have the Last Herald Mage trilogy. That's Vonyl's story. and somebody saw Laven Firestorm, and we want to know what happened at Whitefold Pass and Burning Pines. We want that story. Here, have Burning Bright or Brightly Burning or whatever the name of it is. Brightly Burning, I think. There's the story of Laven Firestorm. And then she branches out. She has some books that are set in this universe that are not about the Heralds. She has the Vows and Honor duology, which is Tarma and Kethri. Kethri is a sorceress, and Tarma is one of the Cheyenne from the Dorisha Plains. They're sort of a Native American type people.
Okay.
And
yeah, we haven't met any of those yet in this book,
no,
right? Okay.
Right now, mostly all you've dealt with are the Heralds at the Collegium. When she gets on in the story, you start branching out and meeting some people in the other countries and things that tie in with what's happening in Valdemar, and
okay.
It's really fascinating. And what I like is you also get Alberic. You find out, he's from Kars, and his people thought he was a demon because he had these abilities.
That's the weapons master, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a duology that's his story.
Okay, cool.
It's how he was chosen and how he came to be in Valdemar.
Because I liked him a lot. He was very much tough love.
Yeah.
Kind of guy. I mean, he was a really strict teacher, and you often came away with bruises because he was trying to make sure that you were prepared to fight and defend yourself and everything like that, and you're not going to get prepared by, going easy. But you could also tell that he really cared about all of the kids too, so yeah. I really liked him.
And he tries to make their fighting style fit their abilities.
Right.
He doesn't want, like, somebody like Talia, he doesn't want to try to teach her how to use a broadsword.
Right.
Because she's so small and petite. He, tailors their schooling to their abilities. And that's kind of a problem that Vonyl had. You'll find out in his story is that the weapons master where he lived tried to make him learn the style of fighting that didn't suit him.
Okay.
Vonyl's story makes me cry, just so you know.
Aww.
But, Alberic's a very good weapons master. And then, there's a lot of books, the biggest portion of her Valdemar books take place probably within the same 15 or 20 year time span.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with Alberic's tale, how he was chosen, and going through up until the Owlflight, Owlsight, and Owlnight. Those are the books that were written most recently chronologically in the timeline.
Okay.
And we start with these when Elspeth is just a little girl, and by the time of Mage Wind's Mage Storm, she's 19, I believe.
Yeah, we need to talk about her a little bit too.
Yeah, she's and Hulda. When Talia came and first met Elspeth, everybody called her the Brat.
With good reason. She was a terrible, terrible child.
She was. And she was horrible.
And it was so lucky that, Talia did have some experience dealing with smaller children from when she was at the Hold. I mean, she did help out with the littles, as they call them, every so often. And even when she first meets her, and she doesn't even know who this little girl is, she just pretty much doesn't take any of her crap. And I think that was part of what made Talia and Elspeth's relationship so well, because Talia knew that this kid had been coddled for so long and manipulated too, because like we said, we had her maid who was basically drugging the other maid so that she could influence the heir, Elspeth.
Yeah, she was part of this conspiracy that started with Selenae's husband, or Elspeth's father, and they wanted to make sure that Elspeth was not chosen. They didn't want her to be chosen by a companion. They, wanted the unrest caused by Selenae having to choose another heir.
Right.
So Huldah's job was to convince Elspeth to be a horrible little brat.
And she succeeded wonderfully. But once they uncovered the fact that that's what Huldah was doing, and she disappears. She runs away.
Yeah.
And you say we haven't seen the last of her?
Nope.
Goody. But in any case, Talia gets basically free reign to try and tame the brat.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that part of the book because it was so satisfying.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, she doesn't take any of her crap. And the more that Elspeth tries to throw tantrums, or, she trashes her playroom and all of her toys, and she expects everything to be picked up and fixed and put back the way it was. And Talia looks at her and is like, okay, go for it. And Elspeth's like, well, who's going to do it? And Talia's like, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to get done. And so she would sit there and she would break like a lot of her toys because she's throwing them and she's just, pitching an absolute fit. And, now the toys don't get fixed or replaced. They just stay there broken. And
well, the first time she did it, not only did the toys stay there, she had to sleep in a pile of blankets in the middle of the floor because Talia was like, I'm not cleaning it up.
Yeah, because she had completely like destroyed her bed and everything else. And she gets her first spankings, which made me laugh. But eventually, Elspeth starts realizing that her behavior isn't working anymore. And she's realizing that there are some perks to behaving properly and letting people know that there's a good side of her too. And it was nice seeing that transformation as Talia kind of took her under her wing.
Yeah, I mean, she did a really good job of being able to, well, it's like she explained, she's like, I didn't change her, I gave her reasons to change.
Yeah. And so I'm actually looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm assuming that eventually Elspeth will get chosen.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming that that's going to happen.
I'm pretty sure.
Because Talia also helps her get over her fear of the companions.
Right.
So.
And I'm pretty sure it happens in this series because, the first book covered 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think in the next book we cover enough to see Talia get her whites. She actually becomes a full herald in the next book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it's either in that book or in the third one that Elspeth is finally old enough that she gets chosen. And there's something kind of awesome about her getting chosen, but I don't want to ruin that for you.
Okay. But yeah, that was that whole section with basically rehabilitating this horrible little girl was just very, very satisfying and just made me really happy.
I love the part where she takes the brush away from her maid and hits her with it, and then Talia takes it away from Elspeth and tells the maid to hit her back.
Yeah. And the maid's like, what? I'm not allowed to do that. And Talia's like, yes, you are.
You are now.
Yep.
From now on.
That is the new way of things. And Elspeth's just like, what? That's not the way it's supposed to be.
And once she gets over her fear of companions, she really starts to love them, and she wants to go on foal watch with Talia, and she's there to help a breech foal be born.
Right.
And the mayor has, I think it's Karen, pull hairs from her tail and braid them and make Elspeth a ring and a bracelet.
Yes, I love that.
That's kind of a thing among heralds, especially with the companions. They will, a lot of times, if there's a non-chosen person that does something for them, helps them out, whatever, they will make a gift like that. They will have somebody take hair from their tail and make them a bracelet or necklace or ring or something. Or, a herald will take hair from their companion's tail and give it as a gift to somebody they care about or something like that, you know. It happens quite a bit in several different books that somebody gets a companion hair bracelet. But she said that she noticed after that, you know, every time Elspeth would have an urge to revert to being the brat, she would stroke the bracelet and calm herself down.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she said Alberic is the one that dealt the final death blow to the brat when he started including her in weapons training.
Yeah. That was another thing I loved about him, was because she would come and watch, because she spent so much time with Talia. She would go around to a lot of her lessons, and it was so cute the way he just brought her in and said, okay, try this, just see if you can do this exercise. And then he turns around and actually attacks her, and without even thinking, she does the exercise and it deflects the blow. And
right.
She does it, if not perfect, and pretty close to it. And he's like, he uses her as an example for the rest of the class, and he's saying, that's how you need to be. You need to get rid of all of these preconceived notions, and you need to be like this little kid, because she doesn't have any bad habits to break. And so you need to be like her. And, you know, Elspeth just loves that all to pieces. Because she was so used to getting negative attention, but now she's getting really positive attention, and she's being admired for something she's good at, and she just really likes that feeling.
Yeah.
She's pretty proud of herself, and it was just so cute.
Yeah. And, you know, and then the sad ending, close to the ending of the book, when Talia is starting to take classes and learn how to use her abilities, and she decides to see how long of a distance her abilities will work over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when she watches Ilsa die.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Which was really, really, really bad. And because, you know, Ilsa and Karen are life bonded. That's another thing about Mercedes Lackey. Not always, not in every book, but usually there is a gay or homosexual couple that turn up. You know, Vanya was gay. That she won awards for that series.
That's pretty cool.
Several gay and lesbian alliance book things. She won several awards for writing a character like that, and she always does it in a way where it's like there's nothing wrong with them. This is just, you know,
it's just a detail.
Right. It's just part of their personality, part of their character makeup. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. It's almost done in passing.
Right.
It has nothing really to do with the plot of the story, per se, except when Karen's, except for Karen's reaction when Ilsa dies. Obviously, that's a major part of the story. But it would be the same way whether it was a heterosexual couple or a homosexual couple. I mean, it's the same thing.
Well, for them, it was a little worse because they weren't just a couple; they were life bonded.
Right.
Which is something that happens quite a bit among heralds. You know, they meet somebody and it's like, it's kind of a love at first sight thing, but it's more like soulmates at first sight. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually, if they can't stand to be away from each other because it will actually cause them physical pain if you try to separate them. So
it did for Karen. I mean, gosh, yeah, she
really she turned in on herself, and it was crazy. And you know, a lot of times a life bonded pair, if one dies, the other one does too. I mean, it's that strong of it's almost like the companion bond.
Right.
But after she witnesses that, she goes and she pulls Karen back by throwing Cheryl at her, and then she has to go help the queen and the other people because Ilsa sent a message, but they didn't know what she meant because all she said was in the arrows. But because Talia was actually there and saw it, she knew what she meant.
Right. And it was actually the shaft of the arrows that she had was hollow, and inside it was a rolled up piece of paper that had a message on it.
Right. And she mentioned something else about the rings, the black rings on the shafts of the arrows.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be important.
Okay.
In the next couple books. I mean, anything about arrows, considering the name of the book is Arrows of the Queen, Arrows Flight, and Arrows Fall.
Okay, gotcha.
You should pay attention to the arrows.
Pay attention to the arrows.
The heralds have an arrow code, and they'll explain it more when you get there. But yeah, the arrows are important.
Okay. Well, I knew that they said that the heralds were called the Arrows of the Queen because they went where she sent them. But
yeah,
there's more to it than that, apparently.
Yeah,
okay.
it's sort of got a double meaning.
All right.
But and another, I keep thinking we also have a book that is Skiff's story. How Skiff
like Skiff.
I remember when that one came out, I was going to school at Northeast. Me and my cousin both were huge Mercedes Lackey fans, and I had just started reading and really got into the series. And it's like, oh, she's writing Skiff's book. I can't wait for it to come out. Oh my God, I've got to get it when it comes out. I mean, there was a lot of anticipation for that and Alberic's books. And then she quit writing Herald books for a long time. I mean, she probably 7 or 8 years anyway didn't write any Valdemar books at all. She said that she had run out of stories and she didn't want to try to force it because she didn't want to put out something that was of less quality than she knew she was capable of. But a couple of years ago, she started writing again, and she wrote the Collegium Chronicles. In the first book, I got so excited when I first saw the name of the first book because it was Foundation, and I was like, oh, it's going to be King Valdemar. No, it's not. Valdemar's already there. It's about the founding of the Heralds Collegium.
Well, that's probably interesting too.
Well, it is, but still, I was like, we all want King Valdemar's story. Come on. It's what we want. But I do. I love these books so much. And this series especially, this was the first ones I read. And I don't know, for some reason they just really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I read them, and now I own all of her Herald books except for the newest one in the Collegium Chronicles. I don't have that one yet because I don't think it's in paperback yet. It's probably pretty close. Probably should be coming out sometime soon. But and I've read them all, and they're all so good. They're not the most difficult books to read. There's not. I mean, like I said, she throws more of the intrigue and plot twists and stuff in there later on. But they're just, I don't know, I just always loved them, and I want a companion.
I can understand why.
I want to be chosen. I want a companion.
Well, no, I mean, and I know I said that they were obvious, and it was kind of, it wasn't as deep and complex as some of the books that I've been reading of late, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either, because it's very simple and fun, easy storytelling. And the characters, we briefly mentioned Skiff. I loved the fact that he was in Talia's same class when they first got there, and they liked each other, and they were trying to become more than just friends. And every time that they would try to get together, one of them would be so exhausted from whatever they were doing that they'd fall asleep.
Or both of them.
Or both of them would fall asleep, and it became so frustrating. They basically just looked at each other and said, "This isn't going to work, is it?" So let's just be best friends instead, because it's going to be easier. But it was so funny because they tried so hard to be in love, but it never seemed to work.
Yeah.
But he's so sweet, and he's, a pickpocket and kind of a scoundrel in a way, but he's just the nicest little pickpocket.
Yeah, I love Skiff.
So you said he has a book too?
Yeah, Take a Thief.
Oh, I love that. I'll have to find that one now.
And like I said, most of these were written, like Skiff's tale and Alberic's tale, were written well after the Arrows of the Queen books. So, I mean, They went pretty far back because she had already written Mage Winds and Mage Storms before she went back and wrote Skiff's Tale or Alberic's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
Skiff got 1 book, Alberic got 2.
Well, that's fine.
And then there's By the Sword, which is Carowin's Tale, and Carowin kind of goes along with Tarma and Kethri. She's Kethri's granddaughter.
I actually think I read that one. I hadn't read any of the other ones, but it kind of stood on its own, sort of.
Yeah, it was a single standalone volume.
Yeah. So.
But it's good to read it after you read Arrows of the Queen.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read it.
Or after you read this trilogy, the Arrows trilogy, read By the Sword, because it takes place like immediately following these books, like in the timeline.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's how I read them. I'm pretty sure I read the 3 Arrows books, and then I read By the Sword, and then I just branched out from there. I didn't read them chronologically when I first started reading them. I think I read them in publication order.
Okay.
Because I read everything that was out, and then, as new ones came out, I would pick them up and read them. But I have since read them in chronological order, and I think it's actually better if you can read them in publication order and then read them in chronological order. Because if you read them in chronological order, some of the moments are not going to be there.
Right.
Some of those things that jump out at you, and you're like, oh, now I get it. You miss out on those if you read them chronologically, because if you read them chronologically, you start with the Mage Wars, which is the Black Griffin, White Griffin, and Silver Griffin, and you know about the Mage Wars, so the suspense of trying to figure out what's going on in Mage Winds and Mage Storms is not there, because you know what's happening.
Right. Okay.
So I would definitely first time around read them in publication order.
Yeah, that's you had recommended that to me too when you gave me the big huge list of stuff.
Yeah, and it's really, though, after reading this one, you should see, it's not really that bad because they're all written similar to that. Some of them are longer, and like I said, she does get a little more, more convoluted plots and stuff thrown in there, but they're all still relatively easy to read in a couple of days.
Yeah, but there's still an awful lot of them.
There are, but now that I've got started, I'm probably going to read them all. I haven't, because I read Vonul's trilogy not too long ago, but it's been a while since I've read all the rest of them, so I'll read all the Arrows books. I'll probably read from the Arrows all the way through the Owl books, and then I'll go start with the Mage Wars and go from there. I'd probably end up reading them all, because it's been so long, and I love them so much. They're just like old friends. I can't wait for you to meet the Hawk brothers. They're fun, especially Firesong. He's fabulous.
He's fabulous.
Yes, I mean, he is the definition of fabulous.
Okay.
He really, you gotta meet Firesong. He's kind of awesome. I didn't like him when I first started reading the books, but now it's just like, yeah.
I've got so many other things I have to read, though, but now I want to read these. Jeez.
They're so good. They're worth it.
I know. I believe you. It's just the other books that are sitting over on my bookshelf that are glaring at me right now. They know what I'm thinking.
They're still acclimating to their environment. It's okay.
Well, we'll see. But anyway, so I think that's probably going to do it for our discussion.
Yeah, we've been doing this for an hour, so.
Yeah, so that's about right. Obviously, we enjoyed the book. And,
very much.
And Jess recommends the entire series and pretty much everything that Mercedes Lackey has ever written, so.
Yeah.
So take that for your recommendation for this week. And once this episode is up, there will also be a discussion thread over at the Malorian Tavern, and I will post a link to it in our show notes. So, and there probably won't be much discussion yet because I think the forum post is going to open the day before the episode's released. So come on over and get in early on the discussion, because I know we have several Mercedes Lackey fans at the tavern. So
yes, Savannah.
Yeah, she's a major Mercedes Lackey fan. I know she was really excited when we picked this one. So
I think she's as bad as I am.
I think so. You guys can fight for that title, I think. But anyway, so come on in and get into that discussion. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And
You should also put a link. There's a favorite quotes thread in the Great Hall. You should put a link to that too.
Okay.
Since that's next week's topic.
Okay, yeah, I will. Yes, so next week, remember to send in your favorite quotes, and that's what we're going to be talking about, and we will read some of your favorite quotes on the show if you send them in. So a couple different ways that you can do that. Send us your favorite quotes for next time, or anything you want to add to this discussion about Mercedes Lackey and any of the Valdemar books. You can contact us through email. Our email address is bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at BibAnonPodcast. And these two topics in particular will have discussion threads over at the Malorian Tavern, so you can always join in the discussion there, and that is at www.maltavern.com. Or you can leave us comments on our official website, which is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com.
Yep.
So please let us know some of your favorite quotes. Let us know some of your thoughts about Mercedes Lackey, or give us any kind of feedback or suggestions or book recommendations. Anything you want to let us know, we would be glad to hear from you and read your questions or answer them on the show, or your quotes for next week. Be sure to send those in. I think
your quotes will be fun. I have a lot of good ones.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be a really fun episode.
Oh, and we can share the link to my Tumblr page.
Oh, you've got a ton of stuff on your Tumblr.
I really do. If I went through all of those, we would have the never-ending episode. But I'm only going to stick to a few favorites that I have actually posted at the tavern in the thread.
Okay. But I think that's going to do it for tonight. I think.
Yep, I think that'll do it.
All right, so until next week, thanks for listening, and we will see you again soon.